U.S. trade chief says no countries have said they will withdraw from tariff deals. Ukraine accuses Hungary, Slovakia of blackmail over threats to cut electricity. Arab states condemn U.S. envoy's remarks on Israeli land from Nile to Euphrates. Russia hits Ukraine energy infrastructure with major missile. Drone strikes Kyiv. Trump says he is sending a hospital ship to Greenland. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said on Sunday that countries which have reached tariff agreements with the United States are not backing away, despite the U.S. Supreme Court decision to strike down many of President Donald Trump's tariffs. Speaking on Face the Nation on CBS, Greer said he is in active discussions with U.S. trading partners and has already spoken with officials from the European Union. "I haven't heard anyone yet come to me and say the deal is off," Greer said, adding that talks with other countries are ongoing. The comments suggest that existing trade arrangements remain intact for now, despite legal uncertainty following Friday's court ruling. Ukraine has condemned what it called ultimatums and blackmail by Hungary and Slovakia, after both countries threatened to cut electricity supplies unless Kyiv restores the transit of Russian oil. The dispute follows the suspension of Russian oil shipments to Hungary and Slovakia on January 27, after Ukraine said a Russian drone strike damaged pipeline infrastructure in western Ukraine. Both Hungary and Slovakia have blamed Ukraine for the continued disruption. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico said on Saturday that emergency electricity supplies to Ukraine would be halted within 2 days unless oil transit resumes. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán issued a similar warning earlier this week. The disagreement marks one of the sharpest confrontations between Ukraine and two neighboring countries that are members of both the European Union and NATO, but whose leaders have maintained closer ties with Moscow than most European governments. Hungary and Slovakia are the only EU countries still heavily dependent on Russian oil delivered via the Soviet-era Druzhba pipeline that runs through Ukraine. In a statement, Ukraine's foreign ministry said such demands should be directed at the Kremlin, not Kyiv, calling the threats provocative and irresponsible. More than a dozen Arab and Muslim-majority countries, along with 3 regional organizations, have condemned remarks by U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, accusing him of endorsing an expansive biblical view of Israel's territorial claims. The criticism followed an interview with commentator Tucker Carlson, during which Carlson cited a biblical passage interpreted by some as granting Israel land stretching from the Nile River to the Euphrates River. Responding, Huckabee said it would be acceptable if they took it all, before later describing the remark as hyperbolic and clarifying that Israel was not seeking to claim all such territory. In a joint statement, countries including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Yo-Wentatigo Tall, country Jordan, Middle East country Vol, Turkey and Pakistan, said the comments were dangerous and inflammatory. The statement, also signed by the Arab League, the Gulf Cooperation Council, and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, said the remarks violated the United Nations Charter and undermined efforts to de-escalate the Gaza war and pursue a political settlement. Russia launched a new wave of attacks on Ukraine overnight, using dozens of strike drones as well as ballistic and cruise missiles, Ukrainian military officials said on Sunday. The strikes targeted energy infrastructure across several regions, including the capital Kyiv, the Black Sea port city of Odessa, and parts of central Ukraine. In the Kyiv region, at least 1 person was injured, and more than a dozen homes were damaged across 5 districts, according to regional governor Mykola Kalashnik. Odessa Governor Oleg Kuiper said drone strikes hit energy facilities in the region, triggering fires that were later brought under control. Ukraine's energy system has been a frequent target of Russian attacks, with power plants, substations and gas infrastructure struck almost daily. The assaults are part of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, launched in February 2022. Moscow says the strikes are intended to weaken Ukraine's ability to sustain its war effort, while Kyiv says they are aimed at crippling civilian infrastructure. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Saturday that he is working with Jeff Landry to send a hospital ship to Greenland, a Danish territory that Mr. Trump has previously said he wants the United States to acquire. President Trump made the announcement in a social media post shortly before hosting Republican governors for dinner at the White House, where he was seated next to Governor Landry. In the post, Mr. Trump said the hospital ship would provide medical care to people in Greenland, who he claimed were sick and not being taken care of. He did not provide further details. Neither the White House nor Governor Landry's office immediately responded to questions about the plan, including whether the ship was requested by Denmark or Greenland, or which patients would be treated. The Department of Defense also had no immediate comment. The announcement comes amid heightened diplomatic sensitivity over Greenland. Danish King Frederick X visited the territory for the second time in a year last week, signaling support for Greenland, following President Trump's repeated expressions of interest in acquiring the island.